My name is Margaret, but most people just call me Maggie. I am 62 years old, and if you had told me 5 years ago that I would be raising my 3 grandchildren, I would have smiled and said, "Oh no, their mother loves them too much to ever leave." But life has a way of surprising us, even when we think we understand the people closest to us. I still remember the morning everything changed. It was a quiet Sunday, the kind where the sunlight falls softly on the kitchen floor, and the house feels gentle and warm. I was making pancakes for the kids. The youngest one, Lily, was sitting on the counter with her tiny hands wrapped around a cold glass of milk. The twins, Noah and Nathan, were chasing each other around the dining table, laughing like nothing in the world could ever go wrong. And then my phone rang. It was my son, Daniel. His voice was shaky, the kind of shaky you hear only when someone is trying very hard not to break down. "Mom, something happened," he said. My heart dropped. In that moment, the world felt like it paused, like even the air stopped moving. I could hear the fear hiding beneath his words, and I knew something was terribly, terribly wrong. "Where are you?" I asked softly. "I'm at home," he whispered. "Can you come, please?" I didn't ask another question. I wiped my hands, grabbed my keys, and told the children, "Grandma will be right back." But the truth is, I didn't come right back. Because what I walked into at Daniel's house changed the course of all our lives. When I reached the door, it was wide open. Not unlocked, open. The living room lights were still on, even though Daniel hated leaving them on. A suitcase was lying near the stairs. Clothes were scattered. A pair of children's shoes sat beside the couch like they had been kicked off in a hurry. And my son, my sweet boy, was sitting on the floor with his back against the wall, his face buried in his hands. His wife, Emma, was gone. Not for an hour. Not for a walk. Not to clear her head. She had boarded a flight to Spain with her boyfriend, leaving her 3 young children behind without a goodbye. She didn't even leave a note. Just a single message on the kitchen counter. "I can't do this anymore." That was the day my heart cracked in a way I didn't know was possible. And it was the day I stepped into a new role, not just as a grandmother, but as the only woman my grandchildren had left to call mom. The hours after discovering Emma was gone moved slowly, like time itself had thickened. I remember kneeling in front of Daniel, gently placing my hand on his shoulder. His head was still bowed, his breath shaky and uneven. When he finally looked up, his eyes were red, swollen, and lost. "Mom, she left," he whispered. "She really left." The sadness in his voice wasn't loud. It was soft, quiet, the kind that sinks deep into your bones. I had heard Daniel cry before, of course. He was my child. But this was different. This wasn't the cry of a frustrated teenager or a man overwhelmed by work. This was the broken, helpless cry of someone who had just watched the life he built crumble in a matter of minutes. I pulled him close, the way I had done when he was a little boy with scraped knees. This time, though, the wounds were deeper. "It's all right, sweetheart," I murmured, rubbing the back of his head. "I'm here. We'll figure this out." His shoulders trembled under my hands. "I tried so hard," he said quietly. "I tried to be a good husband. I tried to fix things. But she didn't even look at the kids before she walked out." I swallowed hard. The thought of those little faces waking up to a world without their mother shattered me. Lily was only 4. The twins were 8. They were children who still called for "Mommy" in the middle of the night. But at that moment, none of us had the luxury of collapsing. We had to gather strength, because the children didn't know yet. They were expecting breakfast, cartoons, and their parents' voices down the hallway. "Daniel," I said softly, "let's take this one step at a time. I'll stay with you for as long as you need. We're going to get through this as a family." He nodded, wiping his face with the sleeve of his shirt like he didn't know what else to do. While he collected himself, I walked quietly through the house. The place still smelled like Emma's perfume, that soft floral scent she wore every day. The couch cushions were uneven. A half-folded blanket lay on the armrest. A small pink bow lily had dropped earlier was on the floor near the kitchen doorway. Everything in this home looked lived in. Everything looked normal. Except the absence of the mother who once filled this space. I stood in front of the refrigerator where little magnets held up school drawings. One drawing showed Emma holding hands with the twins. Another showed Lily's uneven attempt at writing "Mommy." My chest tightened so much that I had to take a slow breath to steady myself. That's when I noticed something else. The trash bin was full, but not with ordinary waste. Inside were torn papers, ripped photographs, and a single airplane confirmation email with Emma's name on it. The printed ink was slightly smeared, as if someone had crumpled it in their hands and then changed their mind. It wasn't just an impulsive decision. Emma had planned this. I felt my heart sink deeper. I stepped into the kitchen. The light above the sink was still on, giving everything a warm yellow glow. A few breakfast dishes were left unattended, and a small puddle of spilled juice had dried on the counter. It looked like a house paused mid-morning, a day interrupted. But what struck me most was the silence. A silence so heavy it pushed against the walls. I stood there for a moment, breathing it in, letting the truth settle. Emma was gone. She wasn't coming back for dinner. She wasn't coming back for bedtime kisses. She wasn't coming back for anything. I heard footsteps behind me. Daniel had followed. "Mom," he said, voice still raw, "what am I supposed to tell them?" I turned to him slowly, searching his face. He looked like a man drowning, desperate for something to hold on to. "You tell them the truth," I said softly, but in a way that doesn't break them. "They're still so young." He nodded helplessly. "I don't know if I have the strength." "You do," I whispered. "And you're not doing it alone." We stood there together in that kitchen, two adults trying to prepare ourselves for the hardest conversation we would ever have with three innocent children. After a long pause, Daniel asked, "Did I do something wrong?" That question. Oh, that question pierced me. "No," I said firmly. "You loved her. You tried. You gave her a home, a family. People make choices, Daniel. Sometimes choices that break the people who care for them." He lowered his eyes. "I just don't understand why she didn't take the kids. Not even a goodbye." I knew the answer long before he asked. I had seen the cracks. The moments Emma disappeared for long late-night walks. The times she returned with excuses that didn't add up. The way she distanced herself from family gatherings. The way she seemed to drift, present in body but absent in spirit. But I never imagined she would leave her children. Some mothers break. Some mothers walk away. But very few walk away without even holding their children one last time. "We'll protect them," I said gently. "And we'll keep this family standing." After a few more minutes, Daniel and I drove back to my house to pick up the children. The car ride was silent. Not the peaceful kind, the heavy kind, where sadness sits in the back seat with you. When we arrived, the children were sitting on the living room rug, playing with blocks. The moment they saw their father, they rushed to him. "Daddy," the twins shouted. Lily ran behind them on her little legs, her ponytail bouncing with each step. Daniel knelt and wrapped all three of them in his arms. I could hear him sniff quietly as he buried his face into the soft hair of his children. "Are you okay, Daddy?" Nathan asked. His eyes were big and curious. Daniel forced a small smile. "Yeah, buddy. Daddy's okay." But even a child can sense when something is wrong. They all looked up at me next, their eyes searching my face. "Grandma," Lily said, reaching her arms toward me, "why did you go?" "We wanted pancakes." Her little voice cracked something inside me again. "I know, sweetheart," I said as I lifted her gently. Grandma had to help Daddy for a moment. The twins looked at us, confused. "Is Mommy coming to pick us up?" Noah asked. That question was like a stone dropping into deep water. Daniel looked at me, panic flickering in his eyes. I gave him a small nod, the kind mothers give their grown children to say you can do this. He sat on the couch, pulling the kids close. "Kids," he began softly, Mommy won't be home for a while." "How long?" Nathan asked. Daniel swallowed hard. "I'm not sure." "Is she okay?" Noah asked nervously. "Yes," Daniel whispered. "She's okay. She needs time away." Lily, being too young to understand words like away, frowned. "Is Mommy mad?" "No, baby," Daniel said, his voice gentle. "Mommy just needs some time." The children nodded, not because they understood, but because children trust the adults who love them. I sat beside Daniel and placed my arm around him. For the next hour, the kids stayed close to their father, touching his arm, playing with his shirt sleeve, seeking comfort without even realizing it. Watching them broke my heart in slow, quiet waves. That evening, after the children had fallen asleep at my house, all three curled up in the guest bedroom like ducklings, Daniel and I sat at the kitchen table. The warm glow of the overhead lamp made everything feel softer, even the pain. Daniel held a cup of tea between his hands, staring into it as if searching for answers at the bottom. "Mom," he said, "was she unhappy?" I exhaled slowly. "Maybe. But unhappiness doesn't excuse abandoning her children." He nodded, silent. "We'll make a plan," I continued. "You'll stay here tonight. Tomorrow we'll figure out work, schedules, and what the kids will need." "I don't know how to be both mom and dad," he whispered. "You don't have to be," I said. "You just have to be their father. I'll be here. We'll raise them together for as long as you need." His eyes lifted. "Are you sure?" "Daniel," I said softly, "those children are my heart too." He looked down again, his shoulders softening. The house felt peaceful, not because the situation was easy, but because we were choosing to face it with love instead of panic. Outside, a gentle rain began tapping against the windowpane. Soft, steady, comforting. It matched the kind of night where life feels too heavy, but somehow, you still find the strength to breathe. For the next few days, life shifted slowly but significantly. Daniel took a leave of absence from work. The children stayed with me, filling the house with tiny footsteps, crayons, cartoons, and bedtime stories. Every morning, I made breakfast, not pancakes every day, but enough warmth to remind them they were surrounded by love. Every afternoon, Daniel tried to answer their curious questions about, "Where is Mommy?" with as much honesty as he could without causing harm. Every night, the twins cried quietly in their sleep. And Lily. Sweet little Lily would wake up calling for her mother, her voice soft and hopeful. The first few times it happened, Daniel rushed to her bedside. Later, when the exhaustion grew too heavy, I took over. I would sit beside her, rub her tiny back, and whisper, "Grandma's here, sweetheart. You're safe." She would fall back asleep clinging to my hand. It was during those nights that I realized something important. Children do not need perfection. They need presence. Warmth. Consistency. Arms to run into. Someone to choose them, every single time. One evening, a week after Emma left, I found a small envelope placed in my mailbox. My name was written on the front in familiar handwriting. Emma's. Inside was a short note. "I'm sorry. I can't come back. Please take care of them. No explanation. No promise. Just a final confirmation of the decision she had already made. I closed the letter quietly and tucked it into my pocket. There was no point showing it to the children. And Daniel? Well, he was already carrying enough weight on his shoulders. That night, after everyone was asleep, I sat alone on the porch. The air was cold, but the silence was comforting. I looked up at the sky, dark, scattered with stars, and said softly, "They don't deserve this. But I'll make sure they grow with love." A gentle breeze brushed my cheek, almost like an answer. And so, without planning it, without expecting it, I stepped into a new chapter of my life, one where I wasn't just Grandma Maggie, but the woman who would help rebuild a broken home with patience, tenderness, and unwavering love. The weight of new routines. The first few weeks after Emma left felt like walking on uneven ground. Some days were quiet. Some days were filled with small storms, not loud, shouting storms, but the silent ones that gather inside a house filled with children who miss someone they cannot understand losing. My home changed quickly. The living room became a playroom. Walls carried the soft sound of cartoons. My dining table turned into a maze of crayons, homework sheets, and snack bowls. Night after night, I found tiny socks under the couch and toy cars inside my shoes. I didn't complain, not once. But the truth was, the shift was big. For 62 years, I had lived in a home where silence was familiar and comfortable. I used to enjoy slow mornings, reading the newspaper with a cup of coffee, listening to birds outside, taking long walks to clear my thoughts. Now life moved with a different rhythm. A faster one. A louder one. A more complicated, emotional one. Daniel tried hard to adjust too. He woke up each morning with a determination I admired deeply. He packed lunches, brushed hair, tied shoelaces, and drove the kids to school. But every night, I saw the exhaustion behind his eyes. Once, after the kids were asleep, he sat on the edge of the couch and said softly, "I don't know how she did this every day." I rested a hand on his shoulder. "You're doing it now. And you're doing it well." He nodded, but I could tell the weight was heaviest at night, when the house was quiet, and he was left alone with his thoughts. Questions without answers. Children may be small, but their hearts feel everything. Especially when a mother disappears without goodbye. One Wednesday afternoon, when I picked the kids up from school, Noah climbed into the car with a frown on his face. "Grandma," he said, "my friend Ethan said moms don't leave unless kids are bad." My heart clenched. "Oh sweetheart," I whispered, "you are not bad. You are wonderful. Your mom leaving had nothing to do with you." "But why, then?" he asked, his little voice breaking. Sometimes, as adults, we search desperately for the right words, words that can protect a child from the corners of the world that feel too sharp. But some questions don't have easy answers. Sometimes grown-ups make choices that hurt people they love, I said gently. But those choices are about them, not you. Nathan, who had been quiet until now, looked out the window and whispered, "She didn't say goodbye." I reached back and touched his hand. "I know, baby. And I'm so sorry." Lily, confused but sensing the heaviness, simply climbed onto my lap when we got home and laid her head on my shoulder. Children feel absence like a shadow, even when no one explains it to them. The strain on Daniel. Daniel tried to be a strong father, but grief has a way of creeping into small spaces, the hallway outside a bedroom, the silence after dinner, the dark moments before sleep. One night, I found him sitting in his old room at my house. The lights were off, and only the dim glow of the streetlight outside touched his face. "Mom," he said quietly without looking at me, "did she ever love me?" I walked in slowly and sat beside him on the bed. "She did," I said softly. Maybe not in the way you hoped. Maybe not in the way she should have. But she did. He rubbed his hands together. I keep thinking I should have seen the signs, he whispered. The late nights. The sudden coldness. The way she avoided talking about anything real. I shook my head. You trusted her. That's what love does. It gives people the benefit of the doubt. A long silence floated between us. Then he said something he had been holding for weeks. She texted me. My heart stopped for a moment. What did she say? He handed me his phone. The message was simple. Please don't call me. I'm starting over. Tell the kids I'm safe. No warmth. No explanation. No regret. Just a clean break from the life she left behind. Daniel whispered, how can a mother walk away so easily? I didn't have the answer. And I didn't pretend to. Instead, I put my arm around him and held him like I did when he was a little boy who scraped his knee on the sidewalk. Some sorrow doesn't need answers, it needs quiet company. Whispers in the community. Small towns see everything. And they talk, gently, quietly, but they talk. At church, people gave us soft, sympathetic looks. At the grocery store, neighbors spoke to me in gentle tones, like they were afraid I might break. One woman, Mrs. Franklin, squeezed my hand and said, "We're praying for your family, Maggie." Others whispered behind their shopping carts, not out of cruelty, but out of curiosity and sadness. And then came the questions. Do they know where she is? Will she ever come back? What about the children? I answered as simply and kindly as I could. We're taking it one day at a time. But inside, it stung, not because of embarrassment, but because every question forced us to revisit the ache. The kids, too, felt the change. The twins told me that teachers had pulled them aside gently, asking if they needed anything. Friends looked at them differently. And Lily, little Lily, grew quieter at preschool. Her teacher told me she often sat near the window during playtime, staring outside as if waiting for someone. She doesn't talk much lately, her teacher said. I nodded, swallowing the emotion rising in my chest. Children grieve in silence. They don't break things or scream. They simply turn inward. A visit from Emma's mother. 2 months after Emma left, the doorbell rang one Saturday morning. When I opened the door, I found Carol, Emma's mother, standing there. I hadn't seen her since Christmas. She looked thin, tired, and older. Maggie, she said softly. Can I come in? I stepped aside. She walked into the living room, looking around as if expecting to see the children come running. Instead, she found toys neatly stacked in baskets and family pictures arranged on the shelves. I'm sorry I haven't been here, she said, biting her lip. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to look you in the eye. You don't need to apologize, I said gently. None of this is your fault. Her shoulders sagged, and she exhaled shakily. I can't believe she did this, she whispered. I raised her better than that. She wiped her eyes carefully. I talk to her sometimes, she continued. Not often. But enough to know she's not coming back. The words dropped like a stone in the room. Does she ask about the kids? I asked quietly. She looked down. No. Not really. That answer hit me harder than anything. Not because I expected Emma to change, I no longer did, but because her indifference cut deeper than her absence. Carol stayed for almost an hour. She apologized again before leaving. I'm grateful they have you, she said, her voice cracking. You've always had a good heart, Maggie. When she walked away, I noticed her shoulders trembling. Pain travels through generations. Children hurt, parents hurt, grandparents hurt, all because of one decision. The day Daniel broke down. Life went on, but not smoothly. Then came the night Daniel broke in a way I had never seen. It was a Tuesday. The kids were in bed. The house was dim and quiet. Daniel was in the laundry room, folding clothes. I walked in to put away a basket of towels, and found him standing still, holding one of Lily's small pink dresses. Just standing there. Not moving. Not blinking. "Daniel?" I said softly. He didn't answer. Then, slowly, he sank to the floor, the dress still in his hands. And for the first time since Emma left, he sobbed. Not loudly. Not violently. But deeply, in a quiet, trembling way that comes from a place too tired to hide the pain anymore. I sat beside him, my eyes filling as I wrapped my arms around him. He whispered, "I don't know if I can do this. I don't know how to be enough for them." "You already are," I whispered back. "You're their father. That is enough." "But I'm failing." "No. You're grieving." He leaned into me like he used to when he was a little boy who just wanted his mom. "I miss my old life," he whispered. "I miss having someone beside me at night. I miss feeling like I wasn't alone in raising them." I stroked his hair gently. "You're not alone," I said. "You have me. And you have them. And we will rebuild this life together." In that moment, we were not mother and son. We were simply two human beings holding each other up against the weight of heartbreak. A letter from Spain. One morning, a new envelope appeared in the mailbox. Spain. No return address. It was from Emma. Daniel opened it at the kitchen table while I prepared breakfast. Inside the envelope was a short letter, only 3 sentences. "I'm living with someone. I'm happy. Please don't make me feel guilty. I can't come back." Daniel stared at the paper for a long time, then folded it neatly and put it away without saying a word. He didn't cry. He didn't yell. He simply moved on. That was the moment I realized the rising conflict wasn't about Emma's absence. It was about healing from the wound she left behind. The calm before a different kind of storm. Spring arrived quietly that year. The air felt warmer, the days longer, and our routines a bit smoother. The children laughed more. Daniel smiled more often. And slowly, soft little pieces of life began rearranging themselves into something stable, maybe not perfect, but stable. But grief doesn't disappear. It transforms. And sometimes it surfaces on gentle days, not the heavy ones. One ordinary Saturday morning, while the kids played in the backyard, Daniel walked into the kitchen holding the mail. "Mom," he said, placing a letter on the counter, "this came for me." I recognized the handwriting immediately. Emma's. My heart tightened, but I stayed calm. She wrote again. He nodded silently. He didn't open it. Instead, he sat down, staring at the envelope as if it were a fragile thing that might crumble or explode, he didn't know which. The children's laughter drifted through the window. Lily was squealing about a butterfly she found. The twins were arguing about who could run faster. The sounds were light, beautiful. And yet this envelope threatened to shift something again. After a long moment, Daniel said, "Can you open it?" "I don't think I can." I sat beside him, took the envelope, and carefully broke the seal. Inside, there were 3 pages, the longest letter she ever sent. I braced myself. Emma's letter. The letter wasn't angry. It wasn't even defensive. It was hollow. Empty in a way that told me Emma had already detached herself from a life she no longer wanted to remember. Her words were simple. "Daniel, I know leaving hurt everyone. But I felt trapped. I felt invisible. I fell out of love long before I said anything. Spain feels like the first place where I can breathe. I met someone who understands me. I'm sorry I didn't say goodbye to the children. It was too painful. Please don't let them hate me. Hate? The children didn't hate her. They just waited for someone who wasn't coming back. The rest of the letter was a strange blend of justification and apology, neither strong enough to heal anything. Daniel leaned back in his chair, eyes closed as I read every sentence aloud. That's it, he said quietly when I finished. She expects us to just accept it. I touched his hand gently. It's not about accepting, sweetheart. It's about letting go. He shook his head. How do you let go of someone who was supposed to be your forever? I didn't have a perfect answer. By choosing peace over pain, I whispered. He didn't reply, but I saw something shift in his face, not anger, not heartbreak. A quiet, tired acceptance. But that wasn't the turning point yet. The turning point came 3 weeks later. The unexpected visitor. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon. The kids were at school. Daniel was at work again, finally easing back into his job. I was folding laundry when the doorbell rang. When I opened the door, I froze. Emma stood on my porch. Her hair was shorter. Her clothes were newer. And her smile was nervous, unsure, almost apologetic. "Hi, Maggie," she whispered. I couldn't speak. For a long moment, all I could do was stare. She shifted awkwardly. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside slowly, letting her into my home, the home where her children had cried for her. She walked in carefully, like she was stepping into a memory she wasn't sure she belonged in anymore. "How did you get here?" I finally asked. "I flew in yesterday," she replied quietly. "I need to talk to Daniel." I crossed my arms gently. "What about the children?" Her eyes flickered. "That's why I came." We sat down at the dining table, the one where the twins often built Lego castles and Lily drew flowers. "Are you staying?" I asked. She shook her head. "No. I'm going back to Spain next week." The answer pierced something inside me, a soft, wounded part. She wasn't back to rebuild. She wasn't back to reclaim the life she abandoned. She was back for something else. "What do you want to say to Daniel?" I asked. She looked down at her hands. "I want to ask if he'll let me see the kids." The air felt heavier. After a long silence, I asked. "Why now?" She swallowed. "In Spain, everything is exciting. Loud. New. But at night, it's quiet. Too quiet." And I started thinking about them. About what I did. I watched her carefully. "And what did you realize?" She wiped her eye. "That I left too quickly. That I hurt them. That I hurt Daniel. And maybe I was running from my own problems, not from them." Her voice cracked. "Maggie. I know I can't undo anything. But I want to see them once before I leave again." I exhaled slowly, the kind of breath that carries too much emotion. "This is not my decision to make," I said gently. "It's Daniel's. And the children's." She nodded, tears gathering. "Can you at least tell him I'm here?" I hesitated. Then I nodded. But deep inside, I knew this would reopen wounds that were just beginning to heal. The call that changed everything again. Daniel came home early that day. He walked into the living room, saw me standing there, and then saw Emma sitting on the couch. His breath caught. His entire body froze. Emma stood slowly. "Daniel," she whispered. He didn't answer. The silence in the room was painful, the kind that makes you afraid to move or breathe. Finally, Daniel spoke, his voice barely audible. Why did you come? She took a step toward him. Because I needed to say I'm sorry, and because I want to see the kids. Daniel's jaw tightened. His hands shook. You left them, he whispered. You left them without looking back. I know, she said, crying softly. And I regret it every day. Daniel turned away, covering his face with his hands. I stepped back quietly, giving them space. Emma continued, voice trembling. I don't want to take them away. I know I don't deserve them. But I just want an hour. Please. Daniel lowered his hands slowly. You want to walk back into their lives for an hour and then disappear again? She sobbed. I don't know how to stay. I don't know who I am anymore. Then Daniel said something unexpected, something that changed everything. You can see them. But not alone. And not as their mother. Not yet. Emma nodded desperately. That's fair. More than fair. He wiped his face, still shaken. They get out of school at 3. You can see them at the park. I'll be there. Mom will be there. She whispered, thank you, but Daniel didn't answer. He walked away to wash his face, and I followed him quietly. In the hallway, he paused. Mom, he said, his voice breaking, am I doing the right thing? I placed my hand on his cheek. You're doing the brave thing. He nodded slowly. And that evening, a soft, windy evening, became the true turning point of our lives. The meeting in the park. The park was quiet, with only a few children on the swings. The breeze carried the smell of grass and early spring flowers. Daniel held Lily's hand. The twins walked on either side of him. Emma stood by a bench, her hands trembling. When the children saw her, their steps slowed. Noah stopped first. Then Nathan. Then little Lily. They stared at her like they were trying to understand if she was real. Emma knelt down. Hi, she whispered, tears falling. Hi, my babies. No one moved for a moment. Then Lily took one small step forward. Mommy. Her voice was fragile, like a memory trying to come back to life. Emma broke into tears and opened her arms. Lily ran into them. The twins followed slowly, not running, not smiling, but walking carefully. Emma held all 3 of them, crying into their shoulders. I'm sorry, she whispered over and over. I'm so sorry. I watched Daniel standing a few steps back, hands in his pockets, tears silently rolling down his face. This wasn't forgiveness. This wasn't healing. It was a beginning. A small opening in a locked door. The children didn't ask questions. They didn't demand explanations. Children love first. Think later. And hurt quietly. After a while, Emma pulled back and wiped their faces gently. I'm going back soon, she whispered. But I wanted to see you. I wanted to tell you I love you. Nathan frowned. Are you coming back to live with us? Emma froze. Daniel stepped forward gently. Boys. Mommy isn't staying. But she wanted to see you. Noah's face fell. Nathan looked down. Lily clung to Daniel's leg. For a moment, no one moved. Then Noah said quietly. Can you read us a story today? Emma's face softened. I can, if you want. The twins nodded. So the 5 of them sat on the grass, Emma reading a children's book, her voice trembling with every line. Daniel sat beside them. I stayed a little farther back, letting them have this moment. It was the most bittersweet scene of my life. They laughed once. They smiled a few times. And they cried many times. But they were together. And that mattered. That hour, the one Emma begged for, became the moment everything shifted. Not back to what it used to be, but toward something new. A life no longer shaped by abandonment alone, but shaped by healing, choices, and acceptance, even if painful. Her final goodbye. When the story ended, Emma kissed each child on the forehead. "If you ever want to call me," she whispered gently, "your daddy has my number." Then she looked at Daniel. "Thank you," she said, "for letting me see them." Daniel nodded, but his eyes were steady, stronger than before. "You're their mother," he said quietly. "Even if you're not here." She broke into tears again. Then she stood up, looked at me, whispered, "Thank you," one last time. And walked away. Not running. Not hiding. She walked away slowly, looking back once, then twice, then one last time. Until she disappeared around the corner of the park. Lily whispered, "Mommy left again." And Daniel knelt beside her. "Yes," he said softly. "But you're not alone. We're right here." The twins took his hands. And for the first time since Emma left for Spain, Daniel didn't break. He stood tall, calm, steady. The turning point wasn't Emma's return. It wasn't her apology. It wasn't the children's tears. It was Daniel realizing he could carry this family. Not perfectly. Not easily. But with love. After the park. After Emma walked away for the second and final time, the air around us felt heavier than the spring breeze. The children stood quietly, holding their father's hands, as if unsure whether to cry, ask questions, or pretend everything was normal. Daniel knelt down, gathering all three of them into his arms. "I love you," he whispered softly. "So much." Lily pressed her cheek against his shoulder. Noah and Nathan didn't let go of his hands. I stood a few steps behind them, watching this fragile moment unfold like a soft scene in a dimly lit movie. Nothing dramatic happened. No shouting. No collapse. Just a quiet acceptance that life had changed, and would keep changing. The walk back to the car was slow. No one spoke. Not even Lily, who usually asked 100 questions in 10 minutes. Inside the car, Daniel looked at them through the rearview mirror and said, "You're all so strong." The twins didn't answer. But their eyes softened at his words. Sometimes, children don't need long speeches. Just presence. Arms. Reassurance. And Daniel gave them exactly that. A new kind of normal. The days after seeing Emma unfolded differently, not easier, not harder, just different. The children didn't cry as much at night. But they also didn't talk about the meeting. Sometimes trauma softens into silence, not discussion. One evening, while making spaghetti in the kitchen, I heard Nathan speak in a low voice at the dining table. "Do you think Mommy misses us?" Noah frowned. "I don't know." She looked sad. Lily dipped her cookie in milk and said, "Mommy hugged me." Then she looked up at me. "Grandma, Mommy smelled like the beach." I smiled gently. "That's because Spain has a lot of ocean." "Is she coming back soon?" she asked. The question was simple. But the answer was not. I knelt down beside her chair. "No, sweetheart. Mommy is living in Spain now." She blinked slowly, absorbing the truth with the innocence only a 4-year-old could carry. "But she can call?" Lily asked hopefully. "Yes," I said. "She can call." "Okay," Lily whispered, returning to her cookie like the world had just rearranged itself in a way she could accept. Children feel deeply, but they also adapt in ways adults often can't. Daniel's first real smile. About 2 weeks after the park meeting, I noticed something small, something subtle, but important. Daniel smiled. Not a forced smile. Not a tired smile. A real, warm, gentle smile. It happened on a Thursday evening while he was helping the twins with homework. Nathan had drawn a rocket ship on his math worksheet, turning the number 7 into an astronaut. Daniel laughed, a soft, genuine laugh, and shook his head. "Buddy, that's creative, but it's still a math problem." Nathan grinned. Noah leaned against Daniel's shoulder. And Daniel's arm shifted instinctively to pull both boys close. I watched from the hallway, unseen. My heart softened like warm butter melting slowly. The weight on his shoulders hadn't disappeared. But it had changed shape. He was no longer drowning in loss. He was learning to swim again. That was the true beginning of resolution. When you start smiling again without feeling guilty. When you realize the sun still warms your skin. When laughter doesn't feel like betrayal. Healing doesn't arrive loudly. It walks in quietly, like a friend you forgot you missed. Emma's call. One Saturday morning, a little over a month after the park visit, Daniel's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen. "It's her," he said quietly. The children were playing in the living room. Lily was coloring. The twins were building a fort out of blankets. Daniel hesitated before answering. "Hello?" Emma's voice came through softly, almost timidly. "Hi. How are the kids?" I could hear every ounce of guilt in her tone. And for the first time, Daniel's voice didn't shake. "They're okay," he said calmly. "Do they mention me?" she asked. "Sometimes," Daniel said. "But they're adjusting." There was a long silence. "And you?" Emma whispered. "Are you okay?" Daniel sat down slowly at the kitchen table. "I'm learning," he said honestly. Emma sniffed softly. "I'm glad." They talked for only 2 minutes. And when the call ended, Daniel exhaled deeply, but he didn't collapse the way he once would have. He looked at me. That felt peaceful. "Because you're healing," I said. He nodded quietly. This was the turning point inside the turning point. Acceptance without anger. Clarity without bitterness. Emma wasn't coming back, not to be a mother, not to be a wife. And Daniel no longer needed her to. Small steps toward stability. The next few months unfolded gently. Life didn't transform overnight, it grew, like flowers rising slowly after winter. Some days were still heavy. Some nights still carried echoes of old pain. But the overall rhythm became softer. Daniel returned to his job full-time. The children settled into a routine of school, homework, and playtime. And I found myself enjoying the noise of having 3 young souls in my home. One afternoon, while picking up the kids from school, their teacher pulled me aside. "Mrs. Jacobs," she said, "the boys are doing much better." My heart lifted. "And Lily?" I asked. The teacher smiled warmly. "She's talking more. She painted a picture of her family today." My breath caught. "Oh? What did she draw?" The teacher handed me a copy she'd printed for me. It showed 4 figures. A big figure labeled Daddy. 2 medium figures labeled Noah and Nathan. And 1 smaller figure labeled me. In the corner was a stick figure holding a flower. Not labeled Mommy. Labeled Grandma. I held the paper against my chest, swallowing a wave of soft, warm tears. Resolution doesn't always come from big moments. Sometimes it comes in childlike drawings full of love. The court papers. One quiet evening, Daniel came home with a stack of papers in a manila folder. "Mom," he said softly, "I talked to a lawyer." I looked at him carefully. "And?" He placed the folder on the table. "She said, we should formalize custody." My heart tightened, not with fear, but with a bittersweet understanding. You mean? Yes, Daniel said. Full custody. Sole custody. All legal responsibilities. I opened the folder. There were pages with his name. The children's names. Boxes for emergency contacts. A section for absent parent. Emma's name sat there, empty, waiting for a signature she would never come to give. Are you sure? I asked quietly. Daniel nodded. It's time. We sat together and filled out the papers, line by line. Nothing dramatic. Nothing rushed. Just calm, steady acceptance. When the final signature was in place, Daniel exhaled deeply and leaned back in his chair. This is for them, he whispered. So they never have to wonder. I finished his sentence in my head. If they will ever be abandoned again. The phone call in Spain. 2 weeks later, the custody papers were approved. Emma received a copy in Spain. She texted Daniel only once after that. I understand. Take care of them. No anger. No fight. No argument. Just simple acceptance, and perhaps her own quiet version of letting go. Daniel didn't reply. Not out of spite, but because there was nothing left to say. Their story had ended. Their new story, Daniel and the children, had begun. A quiet summer. Summer arrived slowly that year, like it knew we needed gentleness. The children spent long afternoons in the backyard, chasing bubbles, playing with water balloons, and drawing chalk hearts on the sidewalk. Daniel barbecued on Sundays. We took evening walks. We sat on the porch watching fireflies with cold lemonade in hand. One night, as fireflies danced around the yard, Daniel sat beside me and said, "Mom. I don't feel broken anymore." I looked at him, smiling softly. "That's because you rebuilt yourself." He tilted his head slightly. "I didn't do it alone." I touched his hand. "No one rebuilds alone." The children joined us on the porch, curling up on Daniel's lap, leaning against my shoulders. Their laughter filled the night air, soft, healing, powerful. And in that moment, I realized something profound. Healing doesn't erase the past. It simply makes the future possible again. A quiet night of reflection. One warm summer night, long after the children had fallen asleep, I sat alone on the porch with a cup of chamomile tea. The cicadas hummed softly. The air was calm. And for the first time in a long while, the world felt peaceful. I closed my eyes and let the breeze brush against my face. It had been months since Emma left. Months since the heartbreak, the tears, the confusion. Months since we stood in that park, the moment that changed all of us. I thought about the beginning. The shock of that first phone call. Daniel's breaking voice. The children's questions. The silence of the empty house. I thought about the weight of each day afterward, the routines, the nights of comforting Lily, the twins' quiet resilience, Daniel's slow, steady healing. And then I thought about now. Laughter in the hallway. Warm dinners around our little table. The kids running barefoot in the backyard. Daniel smiling again, genuinely, softly, bravely. Healing is never loud. It arrives in whispers, in small victories, in gentle exhale moments. And somehow, without realizing exactly when it happened, the sharp ache had softened into something survivable. Life didn't return to what it once was. It grew into something new. Something steadier. Something kinder. Something stitched together with love. A talk with Daniel. Later that night, Daniel stepped onto the porch, holding a blanket around his shoulders. He sat beside me, leaning back in the old rocking chair. "Couldn't sleep?" I asked. He shook his head. just thinking. I waited a moment. About her? I asked gently. He surprised me with his answer. No, he said with a soft smile. About us. I turned toward him. You know, he continued, Dad always said life doesn't go the way you plan. But it gives you who you need. I felt warmth bloom in my chest. Mom, he said, voice thick with emotion, thank you. You saved us. I reached over and took his hand. No, sweetheart, I whispered. We saved each other. He nodded, wiping his eyes with the corner of the blanket. I'm not angry anymore, he said quietly. And I don't feel broken. I just feel grateful. Grateful. That one word carried more healing than 1,000 apologies could have. A new morning. The next morning, the sun filtered gently through the curtains, filling the kitchen with soft golden light. I stood by the stove, flipping pancakes just like I had on the day everything changed. But this time, the air felt different, lighter, brighter, hopeful. Little footsteps pattered down the hallway. Lily climbed onto her chair and clapped her hands. Grandma, pancakes. The twins ran in next, full of messy hair and big smiles. Daniel followed soon after, his eyes warm, his face calm. He wrapped an arm around my shoulders. Smells good, he said. It's our new beginning breakfast, I replied with a smile. The kids laughed as syrup dripped onto the table, and for a moment, I simply watched them, their little hands, their bright eyes, their innocence despite everything they had lived through. Children don't need perfect lives. They need love. They need stability. They need someone who chooses them, every single day. And that's what they had now. The weeks after the new beginning. In the weeks that followed our new beginning breakfast, life settled into a comfort I hadn't felt in years. It was almost strange how peaceful the house felt each morning, not silent, not empty, but alive in a gentle way. The kind of peace that comes not from having a perfect life, but from having a stable one. Each morning, I woke up early to the soft shuffle of the twins getting ready for school. They were becoming more independent, tying their shoelaces, packing their backpacks, brushing their own hair, though not always evenly. Lily still needed more help. She would wander into my room half asleep, rubbing her eyes and whispering, Grandma, help me find my pink socks. It became our little ritual. I'd find her socks. She'd hug my leg. And then we'd walk to the kitchen together to start the morning. One day, while pouring cereal, she looked up at me and said softly, Grandma, I don't feel sad anymore. My heart warmed. That's good, sweetheart. She nodded seriously, like a tiny adult. Sad feelings went away because Daddy hugs us a lot. I laughed gently. Yes, I said, he hugs you very well. And you, she added. You hug the best. Sometimes healing reveals itself in the smallest sentences, spoken by the smallest voices. Daniel rediscovers himself. For Daniel, healing came in slow, steady steps. He started going for evening walks after dinner, nothing long, just 20 minutes around the neighborhood. When he returned, there was a different light in his eyes. Not excitement, more like clarity. One night, he said quietly, I'm remembering who I was before everything fell apart. I sat beside him on the porch swing. And who was that? I asked. He thought for a moment. A man who loved deeply. A man who wanted a family. A man who tried his best every day. You still are that man, I said softly. He smiled, a warm, quiet smile. I didn't feel like him for a long time, he admitted. But I'm finding him again. He paused, looking up at the sky. I'm not angry at Emma anymore. I squeezed his hand. That's good. I'm not waiting for her either, he added. That's even better, I said. Closure rarely arrives with dramatic scenes or final confrontations. Sometimes it arrives on a quiet porch, under a blue evening sky, while the crickets sing in the background. The kids' first family project. In midsummer, the kids had a school assignment. Make a family tree. I felt my breath catch when they brought the assignment home. Family trees are easy for children with simple stories. But ours had missing branches, broken roots, and new growth. Still, we sat together at the dining table with markers, glue sticks, and a large piece of paper. Noah drew Daniel first, a smiling stick figure with messy hair. Nathan drew himself and his brother on either side. Lily drew herself in bright pink. Then they all looked at me. Grandma goes here, Noah said confidently, placing me right beside Daniel. I blinked slowly. Right there? I asked. Yes. Lily said happily. You're our grandma mom. My voice caught softly. They added Emma too, further on the paper, not erased, not replaced, but gently distanced. She's still our mom, Nathan said. She's just far away. I nodded. Yes. She's still your mother. But they didn't draw her central. They didn't draw her leading the tree. They placed her like someone connected, but not present. And then, something that melted me. Noah drew a small heart shape connecting me to all three children. Because grandma always stays, he said. I had to look away for a moment to keep my eyes from flooding. Sometimes we don't choose the roles we end up filling. Sometimes life chooses them for us, and we grow into them with every heartbeat. A letter I never expected. In late August, another letter arrived. Not from Emma. From a lawyer. I felt nervous opening it, unsure of what news it carried. But inside was a short, formal message. Ms. Emma Brooks wishes to relinquish all parental rights. No contest. No conditions. I held the paper in my hands, breathing in the weight of those words. Emma wasn't coming back. Not emotionally. Not legally. Not at all. Daniel took the news calmly, more calmly than I expected. He sat down, folded his hands, and whispered. I think this is the final piece. Does it hurt? I asked gently. He nodded. It does. But it also frees me. And in a strange way, it freed the children too. There would be no confusion now. No more waiting. No more unsure questions. Just truth. And stability. And love that wouldn't leave. My private reflection. That night, after everyone went to bed, I sat alone in the living room. The house was dim, lit only by a small lamp beside my chair. I held Emma's letter in one hand and the custody release in the other. I thought back on everything. Her sudden departure. The months of confusion. The small steps toward healing. The park meeting. The children's tears. Daniel's growth. Our quiet rebuilding. And then, something surprising happened. I felt compassion for Emma. Not agreement. Not forgiveness. But compassion. She had run away from motherhood not because she didn't love her children, but because she couldn't survive the life she was living. Some people break silently. Some people flee because staying feels like drowning. I whispered softly into the quiet room. I hope you find peace, wherever you are. Then I folded the letters away. Not to forget them. But to accept them. Acceptance is the final step in healing. A new chapter, not a replacement. In September, Daniel signed up the kids for soccer and dance class. The twins joined a team, and Lily joined a beginner's dance group where she twirled in little circles and giggled when she fell. I drove them there every week. Watched them grow stronger. Listen to their small victories and frustrations. One afternoon, after a soccer game, Noah ran up to me with flushed cheeks. "Grandma, did you see my goal?" "I did," I said, hugging him. "You were amazing." Nathan joined us. "And did you see my block?" "I saw that too," I said, smiling. "You're both improving so much." Lily tugged at my shirt. "Did you see my twirl today?" I smoothed her hair gently. I saw the most beautiful twirl in the whole world. Her eyes sparkled. Daniel, standing a few feet behind them, watched the scene unfold with a softness that warmed my chest. He wasn't just healing. He was blooming. Final piece. One cold evening, months later, when the leaves had fallen and winter was settling in, Daniel knocked softly on my door. "Can I talk to you, Mom?" he asked. I nodded and patted the spot beside me on the couch. He sat down, exhaling deeply. "I think I'm ready to be happy again." I touched his hand. "You already are happy," I said. "Not just that," he clarified with a shy smile. "I think I'm ready, someday, to meet someone new." My heart warmed. "You deserve love, Daniel," I whispered. "And what about you?" he asked. "Do you ever feel tired, taking care of all of us?" I laughed softly. "Sweetheart, taking care of you is not a burden. It's a blessing." He leaned his head on my shoulder like he used to when he was little. "Thanks, Mom. For everything." Nothing dramatic happened in that moment. No big tears. No loud emotions. Just peace. Warm, fragile, beautiful peace. The kind you wait for. The kind you earn. The kind you choose. And in that moment, I realized something profoundly simple. We survived. We rebuilt. We loved through the darkest season of our lives. And now, we were finally stepping into the light again.